Welcome to Fertility Friendly Food. I'm your host, Stefanie Volakis, accredited practicing dietitian and nutritionist and director of the Dietologist, an Australian-based practice focused on optimizing fertility through nutrition. This podcast will bring you snack-size episodes for you to learn, grow, and be inspired by the latest research, facts, and practical lifestyle tips about eating well for optimal fertility, helping you cut through the confusion and myths to take back some of the control on your fertility journey, one bite at a time. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Fertility Friendly Food, the podcast. My name is Stefanie Volakis, and I'm an expert fertility dietitian and nutritionist and founder of the Dietologist, and of course, your host. And in today's episode, we have a return guest, Courtenay Polock from Her Exercise Physiology. She's an accredited exercise physiologist, and she has expertise in all things reproductive health, pelvic health, pregnancy, and postpartum. And she's also one of our amazing contributors to our one-of-a-kind online fertility program, Fertility 360. If you haven't heard of Fertility 360 before, it is a first of its kind 100% online program available to people worldwide, designed to give you a 360-degree approach to preconception and fertility health. We combine experts from medicine, nutrition, exercise, and psychology to bring you a complete experience in terms of education and practical tools to help you on your conception journey. So if you are thinking about starting to try to conceive later this year or into next year, 2023, it's actually not that far away, then you should absolutely check out this program. It is way more affordable than seeing all these types of professionals individually, and you're going to learn a lot. We had 100 people join us in January, and we are excited to be bringing it back again, new and improved. And if you want to secure your spot, head to the link in the show notes below. You can also find out more information there. So without any further ado, let's welcome back Court to the podcast. Welcome back, Court, to the podcast. I think you might be the guest that we have had on twice in this podcast, so you're very special.
I do feel special. It's exciting.
So for those who don't know, back in season 2 of Fertility Friendly Food, I brought on Court, who is an exercise physiologist, to talk about fertility and fertility treatments and exercise, and it is still one of our most popular episodes. Lots of you ask me lots of questions about physical activity, and it is not my jam, so I called in the experts to help. And so Court is back. She's one of the lovely contributors to Fertility 360. But for those who missed that other episode, which I'll leave linked in the show notes, Court, can you tell us a bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure, I would love to. Well, first of all, I'm an exercise physiologist. So I have a university degree, basically, that covers prescription for exercise for chronic and complex health conditions. I personally specialize in women's health, and I run a virtual clinic so that I can see women pretty much anywhere that they are. I love being able to help ladies who are located in places that may not have access to any sort of resources or services like myself. And yeah, so basically I do a lot of mostly pelvic health, pregnancy, postnatal recovery, things like that with my exercise prescription and treatment. So that's a bit about me.
Yes. And I want to talk a little bit about exercise and trying to conceive when I'm working with people who are proactively working on their fertility and preconception health, which is a lot of our listeners. Oftentimes there is a focus on physical activity and the routines around this. But I do find sometimes when I'm working with clients who are trying to conceive and trying to implement some lifestyle changes, that it may be one of the first times for a long time or ever that they're attempting to build a bit of a routine around their exercise. So I was wondering if you could share some of your top tips for building a bit of a habit and routine when it comes to physical activity and exercise.
Yeah, this is a really tough one for a lot of people because it actually does take a bit of work, really. Like, you can't just start and hope that it keeps happening. Like, you actually have to put in a fair bit of effort, and you have to kind of see it as a bit of a long-term commitment because it is something that takes time to see changes. So it is definitely hard. And if there's someone or people who are listening to this going, yes, that is so hard, that is me, I struggle every time, like, you're not alone, number one. So please don't feel like you're the only person struggling. But I think the biggest issue I normally see is people trying to overcommit straight off the bat. So they normally have like this unrealistic expectation of them doing something 5 days a week for an hour because that's what Google says they should do, or their friends tell them to do, or what their expectation is when you're exercising. So I think really changing your mindset about what is realistic for you, number one, what is, I guess, manageable and achievable for you. So this could be like, it could just be a matter of starting 2 days a week of doing some sort of activity, like whatever that might be for you. We can talk about that a bit later, but 2 times a week, and then maybe working on improving that. So whether you start with 2 sessions a week at 20 minutes of movement and then increase that to half an hour and then add another day in as you get a little bit more routine. And you really need to think about picking something that's actually enjoyable, because so many people just pick an exercise that they think they should do because they've seen it on social media or they've read about it and they don't really like it. They just do it because they feel like they have to. So exercise can be quite enjoyable, right? I mean, like, I know that you're a bit of a dancer, so that is something that you would probably prefer to do over maybe going for a run, for example. So
No runs.
Pick something that you actually enjoy, because it's going to be way more motivating to go and do. You're probably going to commit to it and stick to it a little bit longer. And also scheduling it in. So picking a really good time for that works for you, and making it like an appointment, I think works really, really well, because I know there's so many people that are like, I'll do that today, and they never actually get around to doing it. And that way you can pick a time in the week that suits you. So if you're going 2 days a week for 30 minutes, you know that Tuesdays is a day where you have a bit more free time at certain, might be afternoon, might be the morning, you start work a little bit later, whatever that might be, then you can kind of schedule it in that way and know that every week you're going to do it on those days. Helps to build a lot more habit and routine. And then I think the final issue that I mostly see is that everybody has a barrier to exercise. It'll be something like, if you're somebody who likes to exercise outside or you like to go walking, then if the weather is terrible, you need a backup plan. And a barrier is going to be that like the weather. The weather is a barrier. So you need to have that already planned in place for you to do that. So it could be like, if you're going to go for a walk with your friend or your partner and then that person bails out, that's not going to stop you from going. What's your backup plan? So I think figuring out what your barriers are before you actually come across them is really helpful when it comes to like starting to build habits and routines, because we're always looking for excuses to not do exercise. I think I know that's pretty common for people when they're first starting and they're not really super keen like on actual exercise. It might be really quite hard and a lot of effort for them to be doing this. You're feeling you're not feeling very good at it, number one, and you're probably feeling really unfit. So yeah, there's those are probably like my top tips when it comes to like starting out and trying to build a habit. You really have to focus on what meets your needs and what fits in with you, and get rid of all of these ideas about what you should be doing and what, like it definitely is easier to start with what you actually like doing.
Absolutely. Wholeheartedly agree. And I think I've definitely gone through my own phases with exercise of trying to do what is trendy or what other people are doing just to, sometimes it's cool to explore, but, I always default back to the types of movement and activities that I have loved for a very long time, like dance. And yeah, it's so much easier to get up and go. Like I go every Monday at 8:30 p.m. I don't get home till 10 p.m. Like it's freezing cold, it's dark, it's hard to find a car spot. But because I like it, all those barriers go out the window and I still go.
Yeah, 100%. Like otherwise, if you were like, oh, I've got to go for a run every Monday night at this time because it's the only time I have, like there's no way you're going to do that.
You wouldn't catch me dead running.
No,
not for me.
I mean, like, I bet you, like, you just come home feeling better and it's not a chore.
No.
You don't want to feel like it's a chore.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people do view exercise as a chore, especially when trying to conceive, because they're seeing it for a different purpose of like, oh, this is going to help my cycles, or this is going to help me, in pregnancy, and this is going to help me have a healthy baby. And all those things are absolutely relevant and true. But if you are begrudgingly doing it it kind of defeats the mental health benefits of physical activity too.
Yeah. I mean, like, that's just the outcome of the exercise. The type of exercise can definitely change, or the type of physical activity can change and still get similar outcomes, right? I think that's what people need to kind of understand and know.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm going to shift gears a little bit here, Court. There is obviously a bit of a fine line between being active and being too active. And this can often show up when it comes to the menstrual cycle. And this is something that I see very regularly as a fertility dietitian. So what are your suggestions for those people who are aware that potentially their activity levels are something they need to work on reducing when it comes to their fertility health? Potentially their period's gone MIA, they've got no period, maybe they've got hypothalamic amenorrhea, maybe they have a history of an eating disorder. We have episodes on all these topics with other guests. But what from your perspective as an exercise physiologist are your just top line tips around activity reduction?
This is a good one, because this is also very hard for people. I bet there's people here listening going, reducing your activity, like, is that even a thing? But yes, it is. I really feel like I'm huge on education and learning and building knowledge and awareness around everything really. But I really think that when it comes to over-exercising, a lot of it boils down to really understanding why or how that over-exercising can actually be an issue for your fertility health. Because I feel like once you start to understand all of this, you place a little bit of a different value on the exercise itself and what your primary goal is, I guess. So if you're starting to build a little bit of education, like let's talk about over-exercising just briefly, about like how it has a lot of impact on total body inflammation. We know that if you're over-exercising all the time, it's causing lots of inflammation within the body, which is not ideal. But hormonal balancing is another one. So you talked about the menstrual cycle and losing that. So you can really impact that as well. Energy expenditure, you might be expending way too much energy and then in like a bit of a big deficit, which is causing like maybe weight loss and all those other health issues. But if you understand like that over-exercising can actually lead to all of these issues, that is probably the key. If you don't really know how it's impacting your body or why it's causing all of these issues for you, then I think your ability to make decisions based around like actually cutting back is going to be very hard, or maybe your reasoning behind it and not seeing the actual benefit of that. So I think we've just got this huge focus on exercise for body image, weight loss, muscle gain. That's it. Like, it's all an aesthetics thing. I think that's sort of where a lot of those issues initially arise. But if you start to look at all of the other components of it, you really start to gain a bit of a different perspective, and you place a bit of a different value on exercise or physical activity itself. So I think the first key is like really try and learn a little bit more about the over-exercising, or the impact over-exercising actually has on health in general, not even just fertility health, but everything. And then I think it's about looking at how you can modify your own program and which parts might need modification. So there can be different ways that you over-exercise. We can think about like too much high intensity all the time. So if you're doing 6 days a week, 7 days a week of really high intensity training, it might be something like, let's just change a couple of your sessions into a different level of intensity. That could be the first step, because cutting out amount of days can sometimes be such a hard thing for people to do, especially if they are in routine and habits. Maybe they've got a little bit of that mental challenge about cutting back. So switching the actual exercise intensity, or like lowering the intensity, could be quite an easy way to start doing that. And then obviously you could look at what your total volume is. That's another issue. So it might not be that you're doing too much high intensity. You could just be doing way too much. Like when you consider if you go to the gym every single day and then you're walking every single day, and then you might throw in a couple of yoga sessions or a swimming or dance classes, then it becomes a lot across the week. So it might be just reducing the length of your sessions. Or like maybe it's like, okay, well, maybe I don't need to go for a walk as well as do the gym session every single day. It might not be about that for you. And then it could be, what type of exercise are you doing? So we kind of touched a little bit on high intensity. That could mean like dropping the intensity in your gym session if you're like doing circuit training or higher impact activities like that. But it could also be like trying something different. So maybe instead of doing 5 gym sessions, it might be like 3 gym sessions and maybe like 2 yoga sessions, or maybe you're doing something more like swimming, active sort of more restorative type movements. That is probably going to like be ways that you can start addressing your overactivity levels. It's not it might just be small changes to the total programming or what you kind of like doing, I guess. And then I think getting some help, to be honest, with over exercising. So that could be exercise physiology like myself and getting like exercise plan for that. But it could also be like really diving into why you're over exercising to begin with. So maybe it is about like the psychology behind it. Like what is actually going on for you that's making you do all of this over exercising? It might be seeking out some more like therapies to help with that too. So it's definitely like got a lot of different factors involved. But yeah, that would probably be my suggestion for what I commonly see in my clinic anyway.
Yeah, I think what you noted there was beautiful, and I just wanted to build on that, especially for people with hypothalamic amenorrhea and other like period irregularities, is that, you know, there is physical activity at certain levels when you get to higher levels in terms of both volume and intensity is a stressor on the body as well. And so if you're also chronically stressed and then you have overactivity, you could technically, in theory, be eating enough to fuel the activity, but you can still lose your period because it's just a compound of too much stress, both physical and mental. And in addition, I think a lot has to be answered for in the culture, just in the media landscape, online landscape of, you know, often we're glorifying people who exercise a lot. You know, I think a really key example of this is I notice it a lot on TikTok. There's a lot of glorification of being quote unquote that girl, and the amount of activity that is being demonstrated is, you know, high, very high, but they often don't share what's going on with their reproductive health or their cycle. And so we have to, you know, take a big grain of salt. And I think as well, the other, like the older media that I think about is it's always been, you know, every Christmas and every Easter, it's like how many minutes spent running to burn off this chocolate. Like we're seeing it as an energy exchange, and it's simply not that. And we really need to shift people's thinking about the role of activity in their life. And I think a lot of people use exercise to help soothe their feelings about their food. And so the relationship with both food and exercise become highly intertwined. And there is also like people that I would say are almost like addicted to exercise. And, you know, if you told them to stop, that they really, really struggle very hard.
Oh, 100%. And I also think like it really does boil down to like, what is it about that addiction to exercise? Like, why is that person doing that?
Yeah.
Like, is it actually a fear of weight gain? Is it a poor relationship with food? And the actual exercise itself isn't something that they're addicted to. It's the outcome of that exercise.
Yeah.
You know, like it's definitely like that's the vesicle to get the result, really. It could be. So, you know, I know that there are people that genuinely love doing the exercise and the movement, and they actually enjoy it, and they're doing very good levels of exercise. And they're not really, I guess, strung up on maybe the aesthetics of the outcome of the exercise itself. But yeah, I think it's really does like boil down to why are you doing all of this, and where would you might need help that's not necessarily changing your program, because you could still be struggling mentally with coping with all of that because of these other factors. So
totally focusing on joyful movement.
Yes, there is more to exercise than just changing the shape of your body.
Absolutely agree. And same goes with nutrition.
Oh,
too.
yeah.
That's the most misunderstood part of probably both of our jobs that we share.
I know, and I feel like we're constantly both fighting so many social media posts on what we're trying to, I guess, teach right now.
Totally. So a common question that I get asked a lot, Court, is should females modify their activity levels or types of exercise depending on the phase of their menstrual cycle? So the follicular phase, which is before you ovulate, and the luteal phase, which is after you ovulate. And is there any like supporting research about this? Because I'm seeing, again, TikTok, Instagram, I see this all the time. Like, when you're ovulating, do this. And when I'm like, you only ovulate for like a period of 24 hours. It's really, it's a really fleeting situation. Like, explain.
Yeah. So this is a really I've seen it's actually quite an interesting topic because I've really seen a lot of change in this in the past, 5 or 6 years or something that I've sort of really been diving deeper into the women's health side of things. But once it sort of became a popular concept of oh, you should train according to your menstrual cycle, then it blew up into this whole, yes, you should be following lower intensity in this phase and higher intensity in this phase. And typically you would see that you should move away from higher intensity exercise during that luteal phase. This is all hormonal changes and obviously your body being able to respond to different types of exercise better, your recovery changes. You should train harder during that follicular phase because of your hormonal levels. And I just think that's sort of what's typically promoted. But realistically, there are so much variability in how women respond to those hormonal changes. I actually did a poll of this on my Instagram because I was quite interested to see, what do people actually notice if they do pay attention to their own cycle? And I had so much variability in the results. Some women were they felt the strongest and the most fit during menstruation, when they actually had their period. And then other women were bedridden during that time. And they were I just feel terrible. I can't get energy. I'm don't recover very well. And then it was also the same for different phases. So luteal versus follicular as a whole. And some were so great at their higher intensity training, right before their period. And others couldn't even go to the gym at that point in time. And they're nah, I don't even do anything. I just walk. And it was really interesting to hear that from people rather than research. The research is not super strong in yes, you should do this. No, you should do that. And I mean, when you consider how much of our lifestyle impacts hormonal changes every month. So for example, your menstrual cycle hormonal changes can change in itself according to other lifestyle problems, factors what you're eating during that time, what you've been sleeping, traveling, gut health, your digestive system, hydration. You can't factor in every single component every single month and then try and navigate which training load is going to be more beneficial for you. It's just there's way too many components. So I personally have been coming across more evidence that's you should really just be tracking your own cycle and how you personally feel, how you respond to exercise. So I want you to think about if you were to start tracking and you haven't done this before and you've got no idea, it's more how do you feel when you exercise? What is your total volume and load that you can handle without feeling you're not being able to recover, or you can't sleep, or you have to eat excessive amount of food because you're so hungry and you can't quite meet the energy demands. And then track that for your month, maybe a couple of months, and see what happens and see how you actually feel. And if you might notice in yourself, you know what, I actually do respond so much better when I switch my exercise routine to do higher intensity at the end of the month, whatever it might be for that individual, because everyone is so different. I honestly can't stress that enough. And it's not about you should follow this and you should follow that, because that is just also, it's just not realistic.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm just thinking all my PMDD clients who have, significant mental health and physical health concerns that come up immediately after ovulation. Exercise can be a real big struggle. And even my endo clients, around the time of ovulation can be painful. Preamble to a period can be quite painful or upsetting to the gut. And then you add exercise on top, and that can be a bit of a gut irritant, if you went for a run or something like that. So there's so many factors. And I think, often these kinds of blanket recommendations about you should do this in this phase and you should do that in that phase are coming from, people with pain-free, no significant issues with their period on a 28-day cycle, and they're ovulating on day 14, and it's textbook. And I increasingly am struggling to find these people that have cycles like that. Maybe I'm biased, but I don't know who these unicorns are with 28-day cycles over there, day 14, and are pain-free the whole way through, and no PMS and no nothing. Who are these people?
I won't lie. I'm almost in that category.
Immediately my listeners are tuning out. No, I'm kidding.
No, but that's the thing, right? Like, because your lifestyle contributes so much to those hormonal changes and hormonal balancing too. So like, unless like I don't have any hormonal health conditions myself, I'm quite like grateful for that. I haven't had a history of that. Meanwhile, my teenage years, on the other hand, were a whole nother story. And I would have said I had significant estrogen problems during that time. And it was based on food I was eating, supplements I was probably taking that were trying to help me with weight loss, because that's what my focus was. Maybe excessive amounts of processed sugars, not being able to, I didn't have a very good digestive health, so I couldn't really like actually eliminate estrogens very well from my body. And I definitely would have been in that category of like super heavy periods, very, very problematic PMSing, like pain. And it wasn't until I kind of got a little bit more into that health and understanding like how everything contributes to all of these, like, I guess, bodily functions, that I was like, wow, I really need to make some changes in my lifestyle. And at the time, like, I was still like on the healthy, in brackets, I'm like, I got my little speech bubbles here, healthy life of like going to the gym and taking supplements and eating lots of protein and trying to like take my protein powders and all of this type of like, I want to say dumb stuff now, but I know there's people still doing it, but like getting caught up in that health side, that's not really actually that healthy. And it wasn't until I, really did focus on like improving my sleep and improving my digestive health that things started to improve.
Yeah. And I think as well, like, there's nothing wrong with resting. There's nothing wrong with a day of no movement.
No.
Like, you're not going to burst into flames.
Less is more. Less is more. Sometimes, I mean, there's so many analogies I could go through right now about less is more. like makeup is a good one. I like to use makeup for those people who need a bit of a visual. Like, sometimes not enough makeup is, you feel a bit yuck. And then too much makeup is like, you feel a bit yuck. And you're like, whoa, calm down.
Yeah.
And in the middle is nice. It's like, and you get so much better results when you rest. Your results from exercise come from your sleep and your rest and recovery. During exercise, you damage cells, you damage fibers, and then your body is designed to recover and replace.
Yeah.
And if you're continually damaging and not recovering and replacing, you don't get results.
Hear.
So get on the rest bandwagon.
Yeah.
I am actually a prime example of this because I used to over-exercise quite a lot, undersleep and undereat. And I also found that as soon as I cut back to like, I want to say like 3 or 4 sessions a week, I got better results. I felt so much better. And I was like, wow, I actually feel so much better. And the stress around not missing a session is also so much better.
Absolutely. I can wholeheartedly agree. I used to over-exercise too, but I didn't use it as a physical, I didn't do it for a physical health reason. I did it for my mental health. And it was almost like a crutch that I would use to like get me through when I was having a hard time mentally. And so I don't know how I had this level of commitment at the time. Looking back, I was like, what the heck? Oh, no, I don't think it was healthy. So I don't think I would want it back. But I would wake up at 10 to 5 in the morning, drive to the gym in the dark, go to the gym for an hour, 6 or 7 days a week, and then go to placement for uni because I was really struggling on placement mentally. And so, and it was just, I didn't have a program. I didn't follow any structure. I just went in there and I just smashed myself basically to try to, I think it was a way to distract myself from what I was going through mentally. Yeah. I was just thinking about that the other day. I was like, oh, times are so different now.
Yeah. Wow.
But I was like, you wouldn't catch me dead out of bed at 4:50 a.m. No way.
Yeah.
Oh, it was brutal. It was so brutal.
And I was like, 4:50. I was like, oh, man, that's way too early. I have tried so many times to exercise in the morning. Okay, this is another tip from before. I am not a morning exerciser, and I've just come to the fact that I'm like, you know what? It's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. I don't like it. I don't get very good, like, actual workouts from it, and it doesn't work for me. But if you're like that, do we exercise at a different time of the day?
Yeah, absolutely. I've always had this hang up that it had to be in the morning, and it's only recently I've shifted it. And my brain switches off around 2 p.m. with work, and not very productive. And so now I just do my work at 2 p.m. because I need to get away from my desk anyway. I'm not being very productive. Might as well go do a workout at that stage. So it makes a difference. And you don't have to do it at the same time every day. Maybe some days are morning, some days are afternoon, sometimes are night. It's okay.
I know. I agree. I'm the same.
We glorify the routine too much. We talked a little bit about barriers earlier. What do you see beyond what we talked about? We talked a little bit about weather. People being held back from exploring exercise and physical activity in their lives when it comes to their preconception health. Is it being time poor? Is it pain? Is it injuries? Is it other symptoms like menstrual cycle symptoms encroaching on the capacity to exercise, or something else altogether? Or I don't know, from your experience seeing lots of people, what do you find are the biggest walls to getting a little bit of positive momentum when it comes to physical activity?
I think for me, most people are reaching out to me because they're they need help with exercise. They're not just sort of trying to self-navigate it. Well, they probably have been up until now. But most of them don't really know what to actually do, to be honest, or how to fit it into their schedule. I think when you've been out of routine for a really long time with exercise, you kind of how do I even start doing this? Do I go to the gym? Do I go to a group class? Do I just go for a walk? I think figuring out how to or what to actually do with their exercise routine. I think people think they need to follow rules with it, but they don't. And I think they also need to understand that it really, really also depends on what your goals are. I'm constantly talking to people about what is it that you want to achieve through your exercise or need to achieve maybe. So if you are trying to work on your fertility health, your goal is to exercise for your fertility health rather than another maybe health marker or benefit. So most people end up just falling down this tunnel of Google searching and trying to work it out themselves and navigate, what might be, let's say, preconception health. What should I be doing for preconception health and what is the best thing? And then they just get confused and overwhelmed. So they just don't do it. And it becomes easier to just either ignore it or keep putting it off maybe, or they seek help. That's probably the first issue. And then the second one, I usually see a lot of people with this fear of starting and commitment. So it could be a lot of people have a lot of anxiety about either going to a gym or going to a group class for the first time and feeling maybe not capable. I'm not fit enough for this. I don't think I could last a whole hour at the gym, in a gym class or a Pilates class or whatever it might be. Or even just feeling a bit nervous about people judging them, because sometimes you get that vibe from a gym if you haven't been there for a while. I think that's really big, is the fear around actually starting and knowing that you're committing to something. And a lot of the time I also see is the cost and affordability, especially when I hear a lot about I'd really like to do 2 sessions a week of some weight training because I want to get stronger, but I also really want to do Pilates and I love yoga. But when you actually add up a gym membership plus regular Pilates classes and yoga classes, if they're not within that same membership, you end up outlaying so much money for it. And people are just I can't afford to do all of that. I don't want to dedicate, it might not be they can't afford it, but they might not want to dedicate that much for that, especially if you're trying to plan for a baby. There's a fair few expenses involved with that. So it becomes a cost factor as well. So those are probably the main barriers I usually see with that, because most of the other things are usually, like you said, hormonal or menstrual cycle issues and pain. But a lot of people have been going through that a long time and kind of know how to manage that themselves now and understand, I just don't do something when this happens. I can kind of keep my routine up until then. But getting started is usually those main barriers I see.
Yeah. Yeah. I can so relate to the fear of judgment one. I think a lot of my clients that I see also experience that. But the thing that I always say to people is, and I have to say this to myself too, but you don't get better at the activity by not doing it. No one's walking into their first spin class and not dripping in sweat and are puffed out and are exhausted. Everybody is. I've had a few experiences because I have very bad asthma where I've had to step out of group classes and things like that. And I would feel so embarrassed because I think because my feeling was, people think I'm unfit.
Yeah.
And like, which is okay if you're unfit as well. But like, I couldn't determine if I was just unfit or if I was having an asthma attack. And I didn't really want to walk that line and end up in an ambulance, which would be a million times more attention seeking than just stepping out and, sitting out for a few rounds of the session. And so like, in the big scheme of things, I think we overthink these things. Most people that go to the gym or go to a group class, they're there to focus on their own health and well-being, their own exercise routine. They're not looking at you, judging what pair of tights you bought, what your body looks like, how much huffing and puffing you're doing. Nobody cares. Like, nobody cares. Like, think about how many times you have been in that situation. Have you sat there and analyzed everybody else around you? No. So no one's doing it to you.
Yeah, it's actually quite a funny thing because I used to work in I've worked in a lot of gyms, and a couple of them were I'm a massive advocate for weights training, and I used to train a lot in the weight section. And I know that a lot of females will say oh, I don't do the weights because I'm a bit too scared to go into there, and that's where the boys train. And I just don't really know what I'm doing in that section, which is fair enough. But so many times, I would just catch those people that they're nervous of just watching themselves in the mirror. They wouldn't even know you're there. They would probably be so caught up in their own weights training and looking at themselves. Those people that you're actually scared of, that you think are judging you and making you feel uncomfortable, don't even realize you're there because they're a little those people are usually a little bit self-absorbed, but they do not care. I even asked a couple of those people hey, what would you say if you saw a chick in here that might not really know what she's doing? They'd be I'd be yeah, go girl. It's really awesome to see girls having a crack at this type of stuff or having a go. And I just think everybody else is 50% of the people in the room are probably feeling the same with their fitness. Everyone's there because they're trying to achieve their goal anyway. So, and if you're working at a level that's appropriate for adaptations, everybody should feel like it's hard because it's relative to your level of fitness. So, yeah, people that are fit are still huffing and puffing and sweating.
It's hard at all stages.
Sometimes I wish that it would be okay to just wear a little learner's badge. This is my first time in the class, and I feel that would just make you feel so much better. It's wouldn't it? If you just were haven't been here before, it's my first time. But then you also don't want to feel super judged, I guess. But
yeah, I've been to a few gym exercise classes where they'll be who's new here, and instead of how you just find yourself in the back because you're I don't know anybody here, they'll be you come to the front and you do it with me at the front so I can see what you're doing, I can correct your technique as you go. And it just became the tradition. It was so much better to do that because it's everybody knows and nobody's judging you, but it just helps so much more to just be at the front and observing and the teacher more closely than, hanging out in the back trying to be anonymous.
Yeah. I don't know how I would feel about sitting at the front, though, if I was a newbie. I would be a bit nervous, I think.
Oh, I found it so much better because then I could just look at the teacher and not everyone behind me. So much better.
Yeah, I'm just imagining a whole bunch of mirrors and everyone's just looking at each other.
Yeah.
But I definitely think it makes you feel better when everyone knows you're new. Mm-hmm. I feel it's where do you draw the line at being new? How many times can you say it's my
10th time I'm new?
I've been here for 6 months, but I'm still new. My fitness has not improved that much yet. But yeah. Oh, isn't it funny? Us humans are hilarious when it comes to that.
We truly are. We truly are. Oh no, social psychology is absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
Now, as a Fertility 360 contributor, Court, what is your favourite part of being involved in the program?
Like I said earlier, I'm a massive fan of education. I really feel so many things, you can change so many aspects of anything that you do in life if you just have education around it. And I think with health and fitness, everything is such a blur. There is so much done incorrectly, over-exercising. People never really know that's actually a thing until you need to improve some sort of health aspect. I think the fact that it's just so much education about what you can't find on the internet or Google yourself, or it's also taught by people who generally know what they're talking about actually are qualified. I'd love to say that. I see so much stuff that's just from like people replicating other like content or ideas and maybe not really knowing the in-depth side of things. So my favorite part is that it's really good quality education and content for people that really need the help, that want to focus on that. And the fact that you can get 4 healthcare practitioners all together in the one spot teaching you about one concept is something that is so hard to find anywhere else. Like even if you were to go see your GP and then find someone and ask for a referral to an exercise physiologist or a dietitian, like finding someone who has really good access to those people or knows or has a good relationship with those other practitioners that are on the same page with what they maybe believe in terms of like their approach to those sort of therapies is really, really hard to find. And then having to actually go to another clinic and then get help, like I just think that's just so difficult. You can just sit in this program and learn all of it from the comfort of your home. And it's so much more affordable than going to see all these people. You get a lot more content, like the stuff that I provide, I guess, is coming in lessons that like I would have to have like multiple consultations with someone to like get all of this out and teach them and give them programs and advice around things. So like this is just such a, I actually cannot speak highly of this enough. Like it's such a great program and it's really something that's needed for a lot of people. Like everybody should go through this, I think, because it's fertility. Everyone needs to like learn about this at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. And like for me, I wanted to create a bridge between what high school PE classes or health classes, you know, taught us about periods and how to not have a baby. But then nobody teaches you when you are ready to have a baby what you can be doing.
Yes.
And it's not just go to your doctor, get some blood tests done and take a prenatal vitamin and Bob's your uncle.
Yeah.
Sure, those things are pertinent, but it's not the only things. And when we approach preconception and fertility in a much more whole of person 360-degree approach way, where we're thinking about medicine, we're thinking about diet and lifestyle, we're thinking about exercise, we're thinking about your mental health and the potential challenges that can arise along the way, because not everybody's path is straightforward. And so we're also not only just setting you up for optimal preconception health to conceive and have a happy, healthy pregnancy and a happy, healthy baby, but we're also building tools for people that they can lean on in the case where things may not necessarily go exactly to plan and you need some more help. Then you've already connected with 4 clinicians who know this space really well. And so I think that really does make such a difference. And I see these gaps in my clients' teams all the time. And I just thought, how can I make this more accessible? So thank you for being a part of Fertility 360. And I'm so glad that you are part of it and continue to be. And we're really excited to be bringing it back and kicking off again on the 1st of August. So if you haven't secured your spot yet for round 2 of Fertility 360, we're running it live. It runs for 4 weeks. Then make sure you grab a spot. The link will be in the show notes and we'll have more information about all the inclusions and all the little tidbits as well.
I'm excited.
No, me too. So, Court, where can people find out more about you and what you do and all that good stuff? We'll make sure we'll drop it in the show notes, but just give yourself a little shout out.
Yeah, so most of you'll probably find me mostly on Instagram. My Instagram handle is at her.exercise.physiology. And my website also has a lot of information on there, which is www.herexercisephysiology.com.au. And that's pretty much it.
Amazing.
2 go-to places. Come on over, give us a follow. Shameless plug, because I create great, funny reels about pelvic health.
Okay, everybody needs to go watch Court's reels because seriously, they give me like Oscar award-winning performances at times, must say. Like facial expressions on point.
My drama classes in high school did pay off.
Return on investment right there.
I'm like glad I signed up for this in year 12.
Love that for you. Well, thanks so much for joining me again for another episode. And if you haven't already, make sure you like, follow, share, leave a rating and review. It really helps. We're an unsponsored independent podcast. So like all of those little things make such a difference to us. And I will catch you in the next episode, everyone. Bye.